This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. We're continuing in Mishna Berura, Daf HaShavua. We're up to Siman Chaf Hey, Sif Yud Beis. Siman Chaf Hey, Sif Yud Beis. Im meiniach tefillin kama pa'amim b'yom. If you put on tefillin many times a day, tzarich levarach aleim b'chol pam. You need to make a bracha each time you put on the tefillin. Says the Mishna Berura, b'chol pam afilu im kishasilkan hayadaita lahziram teikaf. Even if, when you remove them, you had in mind to put them back, to put them on immediately, you have to make another bracha. Even if you didn't change your place, bein tayim. Okay? So the shita of the mechaber is every single time you put on your tefillin, one is required to make a bracha. Doesn't matter what you were thinking when you took it off. It doesn't matter where you went. The Rama will argue on this. Then if at the time of the bracha you had in mind that afterwards you're going to take them off and then you're going to put them on again, it is clear from the Magen Avram earlier, the Siman Ches of Katan Tezayin, according to everyone, Ein Sarach Lachsar Ulevarich, you don't have to go back and make another bracha. So even Shitas HaMechaber is if at the time of the bracha you had in mind to take them up and put them on again, then according to everyone you don't have to make a bracha. The Mechaber continues, Nishmetu mimakoimam, if it slipped out of its place, umamashmesh bahem lachzir mekamim, and now you're repositioning them, tzarich levarich, you need to make another bracha. Says the Mishna Berura, Nishmetu, it slipped out of its place. Kasav Shla, the Shla writes, that's not the minhag. The minhag is not that if it slips out of its place, we make another bracha. Mishum debeshas tefila mistama einoi masiach daita mehem. Because at the time of davening, you're probably not mesiach das. It's like taking them off on condition to put them on again. But we just said the shita of the mechaber is you have to make another bracha if you take them off. Even if you had in mind when you took them off, you're going to put them on again, you still have to make a bracha. But we don't paskin like the mechaber. We hold like the Rama that if you take them off to put them on again, you don't make a bracha. The pasuk hagab samach dein lachzor levarich. V'imkein, therefore, during davening, you're not mesiach das, and it's like taking them off amanas to put them on again. V'imkein oisan shaholchen lefamim ad chatzos b'tefillin. Those people who they go until midday in tefillin, im nishmetu, if they slipped off, roi levarich, they would have to make a bracha because they're not in middle of davening. Okay, so again, the mechaber holds that if you take off tefillin, even with intention to put them on again, you make a bracha. If you had in mind at the time you made the bracha, you're going to take them off and put them on again. That's a different story. But if you just take off tefillin in middle to put them on again, shitas mechaber is you make a bracha. Shitas harama is you do not make a bracha. The mechaber says if tefillin slip off and you put it on again, and you reposition them, you also make a bracha. But we are not noig that way. Why? Because at the time of davening, you're not mesiach das. But if you're not at the time of davening, then you would have to make another bracha. Chayyadim says even at the time of davening, if you want to make a bracha, you're not gonna lose out. The Mishna Berura seems to be inclined to follow the shla, not to make a bracha. That's if all or most. But if part of it, even though when part of your tefillin is in the wrong place, it's like it's in the bag, it's not, you're not mekayim any mitzvah whatsoever. In other words, when people have their tefillin below the hairline, so what are they doing? They're paying homage to the ancient custom of the Hebrews who used to wear tefillin, but they're not actually being mekayim the mitzvah of tefillin. But nevertheless, if only part of the tefillin move out of its place, after tzach lazilam mekayim ein tzach lachzor, you don't have to make another bracha. Okay. Back to the ranch. The Rama says, Haga v'machzir achas mehem. If one of the tefillin is repositioned, yivarach k'may shminiach tefillah achas, then you make a bracha as if you're putting on one tefillin. In other words, if let's say your tefillin sharosh got moved out of its place, then you just make the bracha of al mitzvahs. If you move off the tefillin with the intent to put them right back, tzarich levarech, you got to make a bracha. Let's say a person doesn't talk in their tefillin, and for something they need to talk, so they want to move the tefillin out of the place, and then when they finish, they move it back. Obviously, we're not talking about the middle of davening. So then, according to Mechaber, you're going to have to make a bracha. Says the Mishna Berura, Sivkatan Memvav, the Kivan Sheizizan Memekaiman, since you moved it out of its place, have a Kamai Shehisiran Lagamri. It's as if you took it off completely. Says the Rama, the Yeishaimrim, some say, Shaloi Lavarech, not to make a bracha if you take off tefillin with the intent to put it on again, V'achinog, and this is the custom, even if you didn't have it in mind at the time of the bracha. But if when you take off your tefillin, you have in mind to put it on again, you don't make a bracha. Now, so that would be if somebody goes to the bathroom for a ketanim, and they take it off to put it on again, they don't make a bracha when they come back. I believe if they go for a gedolim, the Mishna Berura says you do make a bracha, but that's not because of taking it off, that's because of the place and with the activity that you did. Says the Mishna Berura, Sivkatan Mem Zayin. Shaloi Lavarech. Kivan dehizizan al das lachzar. Since you move them on condition to put them back. But the Mechaber, very interesting. The shita of the Rama, that you do not have to make a bracha when you move them out of its place to put it back on, that's only if you moved it out of its place. But if it slipped off its place, then you would make a bracha. We say as soon as it slipped off, the mitzvah is gone. That's why the Rama does not comment on what the Mechaber said earlier by if it slipped off. But the Mishna Berura said that our practice is not to make a bracha even when it slipped off. That's because we have a different factor the Mishna Berura brought in from the Shla, that if you're middle of the davening and it slipped off, it's like you took them off al manas lahachziran. But without that factor, even the Rama would agree that you would have to make another bracha. V'da'oid. Du adinim esiran legamri adaita lahachziran miyad palagnami hayeshoimim. This halacha that the Rama is saying, that if you moved it, this halacha that the Rama is arguing on, that if you moved it out of its place with the intent to put it back, you don't need to make a bracha, is not only if you moved it out of its place, it's even if you completely took them off with the intent to put them on immediately. The Rama would also argue on the Yeshamra, Afilum Shina Makamei time, even if you change your places, Upasko Achroinim Kain, and that's how the Achroinim paskin. What if he didn't have in mind to put it on immediately, but he had in mind to put it on in a bit? Even if he changed his mind and put them on immediately, or he had in mind to put it on again immediately. And then he got delayed. According to everyone, you would have to make another bracha. Now, I don't think this is so pasha. When I say, right, the Mishna Berura is saying that when does Rama say you do not make a bracha? That's if you had in mind to put it on immediately. But what if you had in mind to put it on in a bit, a little after? Now, how much time are we talking about? Because by Hilchos Tzitzis, we give somebody maybe even 2, maybe even 3 hours that if they take off their talis with the intent to put it on again, that's called where you had in mind to put it on again. We spoke about this when we learned Hilchos Tzitzis by the break on Yom HaKippurim. And I don't see why tefillin would be different unless you say that by tefillin it requires more that you're daitoi alei than by tzitzis. But l'chayra, we're talking about the bracha. And regarding the bracha, l'chayra, even if, let's say you had in mind, I'm going to come back and put it on in an hour, l'chayra, it would seem, it should not be different than tzitzis. And if you had in mind, I'm taking it off now, I'm going to come back and put it on in an hour, then you should not have to make a bracha. That's what it would seem like. L'chayra, it should be like tzitzis. The Dirshu also says, he brings from the Bir Halach and Siman Mem Sif Ches, Sha'afim Cholzon Koydem Hasuda Adas Loshav Loshem Rak La'achar Sheyigmar Es Hasuda Nechshav Hadavar Kecholzon Adas Lahachziron Miyad. That's in line with what we're saying. That this, we're not talking about you have to put it on the next 5-10 minutes. Okay? Clearly the Bir Allah himself says after a meal, I mean that's at least l'chayra within reason a half hour. And l'chayra it should be the same as tzitzis, where there's a pretty extended amount of time that still fits into the miyad. Okay. The Mishna Berura continues. Likewise, if somebody removed it to go into a bathroom, you would have to make a bracha according to everyone. Why? Because you're not allowed to go into a bathroom with tefillin on. V'idchile, and the tefillin are pushed aside. Ukmash kasav b'siman samachay. V'kasav achay adam duadin k'shecholitz shetzarach lahafiach. Let's say somebody takes off tefillin, they have to pass gas. Then you would have to make a bracha. Since you're not to pass gas in tefillin, so therefore you must remove them, and in that case, you would have to make another bracha. By the way, the Dirshu quotes the Bir Halacha is the halacha we mentioned earlier, that if you take off tefillin before a suda, you don't have to make a bracha after. That's a regular suda. But if it's a Sudas Keva, so there he says in Siman Mem Sif Ches, in the same Bir Halacha, that you would have to make another bracha after you have a Sudas Keva. From what I remember, it's going to depend what the person's activity in the bathroom is. If somebody goes in for Gedolim, they have to make another bracha. If somebody goes in for Ketanim, so maybe we don't wear tefillin, but the restriction against tefillin is not as fundamental. But we'll come to that when we see it. So, in other words, if somebody takes off tefillin with the intent to put it on right away, you don't have to make another bracha. But if the activity that you're doing in the interim is something that precludes you from wearing tefillin, then you would have to make another bracha when you put it on again. Okay, we're going to hold it over here. If anybody wants to stick around, I want to discuss the shaila that was raised yesterday regarding whether a Sfardi can put on tefillin his style in an Ashkenazi shul, and vice versa, regarding the laws of Lois Skoidu that was raised by the Chashuv Yid in 917-612-8156. Remind me your name again. I'm sorry.
Yankee Danziger.
Rabbi Yankee Danziger. I want to discuss Rabbi Yankee's shaila. Okay, so the shiur is over, and I want to talk about his shaila.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.